Howdy y'all. Did you know the director has a cat called Misty? You can actually see a little cat house in the director's office, which is located in black dusk above the vault you drill. Spoiler warning, when the director dies. Hooray. Jackdaw actually takes Misty, so she still has a home, don't worry. And a much better owner. Jackdaw is Misty's savior. I wouldn't want to be Director Dirtbag's cat, that's for sure. Unfortunately, I don't have any screenshot evidence to confirm this fact, so take it with a grain of salt for now. But Dart is super easy to access. Just ask him and he'll confirm. Now that that's out of the way, today we're going to be looking at both Wren and Rose, a double theory once again. What a treat for you. I didn't want to do a double theory again at first, because the scripting and footage for Falcon and Sparrows was hell to do since it was double the work. But I don't think I can really avoid it, considering Rose's story has quite a bit to do with Wren. So naturally, they had to come together. Wren gets a little too much hate in my opinion. Yes, sure, he tried to kill the player and has a dramatic monologuing problem that I can relate to, but that doesn't change his character. He may look like the typical heartless and serious character stereotype at first, but he has a lot to look at. And Rose isn't just the typical badass woman character, she's more than that too. All of Entry Point has great characters, they're just fleshed out in the dark. Believe me, I absolutely adore character development, so at first I wasn't on board with how we got to see basically none of it. But it's there, and Sish doesn't want to just hand it to us, she wants us to work for it. Yeah, I know, working sucks, but that's what you have me for. Wren's theory is shorter than Rose, so we'll begin with him. As I said before, spoilers follow ahead, so be careful. Theory time. To kick it off, let's start with what we're directly given in the game, which is literally nothing. Basically all of his story is in the dark. All we get to see is he hires Finch and coordinates him until Wren is ordered to kill him. Jackdaw arrives just on time though, and Wren receives some lead to the head. Now, if you don't know the next part, you obviously haven't seen the first 2 episodes. It's lock time. Wren grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and was filed as a missing person in 1999. Wait, if he was born in 1981, that means just like Sparrow, he was also 18 when he began his criminal record. I wonder why. Why does it smell like foreshadowing in here? Anyways, he had formed a group of 4, including himself, and they executed 17 homicides and 11 grand heists. This group got stuff done. Their first hit to land on national news gave them the nickname the Boston Four because, well, it took place in Boston. They never hit the same city twice. After an anonymous tip was given to the police, the authorities ambushed the crew, and Wren was the only survivor of the 4. Halcyon tracked him down and offered him a spot as a field operative, which he declined. Just kidding, he accepted, obviously. Come on, what are we doing here, guys? Wren was trained more by Jackdaw, and then was ordered to assassinate him by the director. That's the end of the file. Wren was noted to be manipulative, cold, and cunning, and now here comes an interesting note. When he joined Halcyon, Wren was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, which judging by his behavior, makes a lot of sense. It also means he's quite literally a sociopath. The law code for the file is even called sociopath. Just the fact he's a sociopath alone, combined with a little research, opened up Wren's story entirely. According to Healthline.com, Health.com, and HealthyPlace.com, I smell a theme, a lot is still unknown about sociopaths. But what we do know is that they're half born and half made. It's not certain why yet, but some children are born with ASPD, kind of. Let's use an analogy and call it a seed. So some children are born with this sociopath seed in their heads. They can either be a normal person or a sociopath depending on if that seed grows. Some people could live full lives with this seed and die without a diagnosis. There are many things that could grow and feed this sociopath seed, but the 2 things that are needed are childhood trauma and the environment as an early adult. That's right, I'm suggesting Wren's childhood was filled with abuse, trauma, and hateful parents. I'm more than suggesting it, I'm saying it. It is literally how sociopaths are made, and he is canonically a sociopath. It would also explain why he fled home at 18 to join a band of criminals. If his parents were crappy, you think they'd care enough to raise money to set him up for college? And do you think he would love them if they were horrible parents? With nobody to love or be loved by, and nothing to set up his future, he turns to definitely not the best thing. Crime. And it goes well. He's smart in planning and execution, and found 3 guys to help him out. That's where the second part of ASPD development kicks into gear. As a young adult, his environment is filled with nothing but ruthlessness, blood spill, and crime. This only feeds the sociopath seed even more, until it is in full bloom. ASPD can't be diagnosed to minors, keep in mind, and the severity of the disorder depends on the person. Wren is definitely on the far end of the spectrum, but not actually as bad as he could be. That's right, he actually could be worse. There is no way to get rid of ASPD, but there are many ways to manage it. Not that Wren ever managed it. He died as cold as he was raised to be, growing up in a world where love never existed. Theory time. Thermite Girl's turn. This one is far more complicated than Wren's theory. Rose is the first character we get to see in the game. She's on a mission of 2 other operatives in the first cutscene Black Dawn, when during the escape, Jackdaw shoots the car, which results in a crash. He shoots all the operatives dead except Rose. After the tutorial, Finch's first mission is retrieving Rose from the black site after Steel Cove detains her, and she soon becomes his coordinator alongside Wren. She makes friends with Finch and is sadly assassinated after the lake house. In retribution, Jackdaw reveals she was a Phoenix informant all along. He also reveals that Rose saved his life by secretly rescuing him in the Ember Shroud, which was when Wren attempted to assassinate Jackdaw. In her file, which the lock code is Memento, Rose was recruited from the Seceda program and was a self-taught hacker. Although she refused to tell them about her history, they were able to figure out she was from a rich family in Monaco, which means Rose is a baguette. Boy Thermite. Hold on, Skiggs, you say, although you probably aren't saying this. In your Rivera theory, you claim Rivera also didn't tell of her past and got beaten for it. Wouldn't that mean Rose got beat too? That's a good point, but I object. They may have been able to discover Rose's past, but with Rivera, the lack of backstory in her file proves they couldn't figure her out. Keep in mind when Rose joined Halcyon, which was also when she was 18. What is with recruiting the younglings for your nefarious activities, Jackdaw director? Back to my point, when Rose joined Halcyon, she was just some girl that taught herself some handy hacker tricks. She wasn't equipped with all the extreme skills. But Rivera already had a PhD when she arrived. She already showed up with her party. So Rivera, who was already experienced, is probably better at sealing away her identity than some young self-taught hacker. Anyways, the file describes Rose of having a higher success rate than other operatives and how the Lake House mission revealed she was an informant. She was then promptly assassinated. There's actually something about the director's notes section that's really bugging me, but it ended up being too huge and off topic for this episode, so that's going to be for another theory. For now, we're focusing on Rose. Naturally, some sort of bond is bound to be formed between her, Jackdaw, and Wren. Jackdaw did train them both, and Rose chose to save him when she should have killed him. Obviously, no matter how much Jackdaw or Rose might have cared about Wren, he's never going to care back. We already established that it's impossible due to his condition. Rose also founds Phoenix alongside of Jackdaw. However, this is where things begin to become a little interesting. The Kill House is a very special kind of mission. It seems to be separated from the others and many consider it uncanon. It's sort of a mystery, and yes, the Kill House is another thing I will be doing a theory on. Typically in missions, you can either go loud or stealth, meaning you can either raise the alarms or do the mission quietly. The exceptions to this are the Scientist and the Kill House. The Kill House is a training simulation set up by Halcyon, like the Gala, but only Rose is coordinating you, and it has a secret path. I'm not going to get too into it right now because that's for another theory, but it has something called Nightmare Mode. Trigger it, and at the end of the mission, Rose begins talking to someone, but it doesn't sound like she's talking to Finch. Quote, "It's done. It's over. Had to have your revenge, didn't you? Couldn't just walk away. I wish it hadn't ended like this. You had to know this is where it would take you. Au revoir." End quote. Yeah, that is extremely interesting dialogue from Rose. It isn't hard to tell who she's talking to. Jackdaw. The dots connect themselves. Rose never wanted this. She never wanted the Shadow War. She never wanted to leave Halcyon. But she cared for Jackdaw. She had to follow him. She couldn't leave him alone. Things were going great until Ember Shroud, where everything changed forever. It hurt her to abandon Halcyon, but she knew she would always follow Jackdaw. I do believe Rose is glad she's with Phoenix, but there will always be just a teensy tiny part of her that regrets it all. Why? Why did he have to take revenge? Couldn't he just leave it alone and live the rest of his life normally? Why did he have to do this and take me down with him? I can imagine Rose talking to herself, saying this. Of course he didn't make her do this, and she's fully aware of that. But what choice did she have? She will always support him because she cares about him. And before you type away saying, "Wait, Skiggs, you're wrong," in the Jackdaw cutscene, Jackdaw tells Finch this whole Shadow War thing was a moral crusade for Rose. I'm going to refute that argument by saying this. Rose was suffering from Jackdaw's decision of revenge, but she didn't want to hurt him. She would never tell him how he was unintentionally harming her and how she hated this whole revenge thing. That would only hurt his feelers. And he's too far into the plan now. He wouldn't undo all of his work. Even if he wanted to, it'd be too late. So she lied to him, telling him the reason she was doing this with him was a quote-unquote moral crusade. Also, if it was a moral crusade, why would she even join Halcyon in the first place? Maybe she later decided she didn't want to be a criminal, just like Rivera, but that doesn't change the first argument. All the words she said in the Kill House were directed at Jackdaw, so with all that in mind, there's bound to be a little strain on their relationship. Of course, Jackdaw doesn't even realize how this is hurting Rose because she never told him. There's also another relationship she has that's suffering. Rose and Wren. Wren is a sociopath. He doesn't truly care about Rose. And Rose knows this. No matter how much she cares for him, Wren will never return the friendship. We see in missions that every time Rose cracks a joke or tries to get Wren to smile or something, he simply responds by shutting her down. What she sees as fun, Wren only views as nonsense. Quote, Rose, "Yeah, it's time to put the heat on Phoenix." Finch, "What did we say about the puns?" Rose, "That mine are the best." Wren, "No, Rose, no." End quote. That was from The Lake House. There's another example from The Gala. Quote, Finch, so what are we doing here? Wren, did you or did you not go to the briefing? Finch, relax, I'm joking. Rose, I'm not. What are we doing here? End quote. Wren hardly bothers responding to that. By the way, that's one of my absolute favorite pieces of dialogue from Entry Point. I love it so much I drew it as a comic. Anyways, sociopaths only care about people depending on how useful they are to them. An example of this in real life would be, say a boss was a sociopath, and they had this worker who was really good at their job. They made the company lots of money. The sociopath depends on this worker, so he'll reward this worker often, maybe with compliments, raises, or maybe even days off. And Rose is indeed useful to Wren. She does great on missions. She serves Halcyon well. At least that's what everyone thought. Such good behavior deserves a reward in Wren's book, so he rewards her by spending time playing band hero with her, as confirmed by Rose herself in the critical cutscene. He thinks that's enough to reward her. He thinks it'll make her happy, but it doesn't, because Rose knows that bonding time is empty. She's aware he doesn't care. Of course, Wren doesn't understand feelings, so he doesn't realize this doesn't reward Rose at all. He thinks it's rewarding her, so he keeps doing it, but it's just empty time spent together. It seems Rose is just not in a good place. Stuck between Jackdaw, who doesn't realize how his actions are affecting Rose, and Wren, who doesn't care about Rose at all despite her desperate attempts to make him. Nothing she had was working for her. It was all clouded by darkness, problems, and misery. Until there was a light. Someone came along and helped pick Rose back on her feet, supporting her, caring for her, all with no catches or issues. That light is you. Finch, the player, the freelancer, whoever. Finch joins Halcyon and is added to Rose and Wren's team. Rose makes an attempt at befriending Finch. Although Finch has a hard shell at first, Rose's personality breaks through it, and just like that, Rose's world lit up again. She and Finch had a good friendship. They were very close, because everyone else Rose had she had strain with. Finch was an escape to all that, a friendship so good and rare, and she defends it with her life. In the Jackdaw cutscene, Jackdaw explains how he wanted to recruit Finch earlier but Rose refused. Oh no, Rose was not letting another relationship go down. She was ready to protect this one at all costs. She needed to keep Finch away from her problems before they plagued this friendship as well. She was so desperate and willing to protect him that she used her dying words to save his life. In Pyre, as Rose dies, she keeps repeating need to save, trying to tell Jackdaw he needs to save Finch. She just can't let him die. She has to protect him. She won't let Finch suffer because of her actions. And then Rose is finished off and tossed into the lake, going down, saving a life, and unbeknownst to her, saving a second life as well. Summary time. Wren was born into a cruel and abusive household, which fed the sociopath seed in his brain that he was born with. With nowhere else to go and nothing to have other than having enough of his awful family, he flees with 3 people, and the Boston Four terrorize the American soil. After an ambush left Wren as the only survivor, Halcyon recruits him and Rose, who came from a wealthy family in a high society in France, and they are both trained under Jackdaw. The director orders Jackdaw's assassination, and heartless Wren obliges. Meanwhile, Rose secretly rescues him. Jackdaw wants revenge to Rose's dismay, and he mistakenly drags Rose down a road of pain. Despite her attempts to get a reaction out of Wren, he doesn't care about Rose at all, which hurts her even more. Finally, Finch comes along, and there appears to be some pure light. Something she was more than willing to die for, and she does. During her execution, she calls Jackdaw and orders him to save Finch from Wren. Rose and Wren are both slain on the same night at the same time. As Rose watches Jackdaw finally get his revenge from above, she just has one final question for him. Was it all worth it, Dad? And that's that. Oh my god, this was so fun to research, and the voice acting was so much fun. Sorry if some bits seem rushed, I was nervous about surpassing the 15-minute mark. Yes, I made Rose call Jackdaw Dad. Come fight me. Bunpug himself says Jackdaw is best dad. Therefore, it is law. Sorry, I don't make the rules. I love Rose so much. And Wren. And Jackdaw. I love all the characters except the director, because he's Satan. Thankfully, Misty was rescued from him. I hope you agree with these theories. And yes, I will make a Finch theory someday. Well, see y'all.